Good day, everyone. I'm Edu Makabatas, and today I will be walking you through a framework that has shaped many of our strategic communication initiatives, the P process model. This model is developed by the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health Center for Communications program in 2013. This model offers a structured yet very flexible approach to creating programs that truly reflect behavior, influence, and create impact. This is something that we've always applied in our local work and youth development office in Pakistan. So I'll be presenting a case on Project InfoSave. Now, our discussion today will have three objectives. First is we will define and understand the P process and its 5 steps. We will also try to understand and relate P process model to existing theories such as design thinking and theory U. And we'll also understand the case in our community, the project inclusive, and how we were able to apply P process model. All right, let's begin. Now, the P process is a step-by-step roadmap that guides you from a loosely defined concept about changing behavior to a strategic and participatory program that is grounded in theory and has measurable impact. It has 5 main steps. First is inquire. Second is design your strategy. Third is create and test. Four is mobilize and monitor. And fifth, evaluate and evolve. These stages are not rigid. They can look back and evolve depending on what we learn, which makes the process more dynamic and responsive to real-time feedback. Now, the P process has three crosscuts concept, which involves SBCC or social and behavior change communication theory. This is where we use behavior and communication science to understand why people act the way they do and how to influence them. Second is stakeholder participation, which we will involve community members, leaders, partners, and influencers from the very beginning to ensure strategies are relevant and credible. And the third is continuous capacity strengthening, which we aim to build skills and systems along the way, not just to execute projects, but to sustain long-term change. These principles ensure that the pre-process model is not just effective, but also inclusive and sustainable at the same time. Now let's go to the first step, the inquire. The first step is inquire. This is where we get to know our audience and context deeply. This is where we conduct baseline and formative research, we review existing studies and data, we explore policies and communication channels, we identify allies, ensure gender-sensitive approaches, and finally, we develop a problem statement. So in our case, in Project Inclusive, we began by community listening sessions, mapping out youth needs around employment, financial access, and psychosocial support. This is led to a focused understanding of the problem. Now, the output of this step is situation analysis. Now, let's move to the second step, the design your strategy step. Once we know the landscape or the problem statement, then we move to designing the strategy. This is where we gather key players to co-create the plan. This is where we agree on scope and limitations, choose the appropriate behavior change theories. As you can see on the right side of the slide, this is where we determine what type of change do we want to influence the community? Is it more on the individual level or more on the social and structural level? And finally, we develop a theoretical framework. Now, for our case in the Project Inclusive, we use the positive youth development and social ecological models to frame our interventions, considering how personal, relational, and systemic factors all shape youth behavior and opportunity. The third step is create and tests. This is the phase where ideas take form. This is where we build a creative team, host a co-design workshops, develop early concepts and prototypes. We test these with real users and make revisions based on feedback. So our output in this step is the prototype or our live prototype. In our case, in Project Inclusive, we develop toolkits, mentorship models, and visuals tailored to our youth. These were co-designed and iteratively improved through sessions with peer educators and target beneficiaries. The fourth step is mobilize and monitor. This is where we scale the program and track its performance. The key actions include here is training implementers, defining roles and sharing credits, regular updates with partners, and of course, continuous monitoring and adjustments. In our case, in Project Inclusive, we implemented it through youth hubs and barangay partners. We tracked reach, engagement, and feedback. We monitor data which help us to pivot quickly, like switching to smaller group mentoring when large sessions weren't effective. Last step is evaluate and evolve. This is where we measure outcomes and assess impact. We share results with stakeholders, even the less successful ones, and look ahead. Where can we improve, expand, or scale? In our project in Inclusive, we analyzed youth feedback, retention rates, and behavioral shifts. We do evaluation reports to help us secure further support and inspire a roadmap for scale up in other barangays. Now, if you try to understand the process of the P process model, you can think of the design thinking or the theory U. These are most likely two things that I also have reflected on while studying the P process model. That we get inspiration from people, we get to conduct research, desk review, do prototype, and pilot test. In theory U, for example, before we develop a prototype, we understand the presence of individualism, where we stop, we listen at the same time, we sense. This is to further understand the personal level of why the issue is prevailing or why a certain social divide is being confronted by community members. And then we crystallize, we create vision, same with the P process model. Now, in the same way, when we try to look at the analogy of community or planting plants in your garden, think of the process, the P process as planting a garden. You start by learning about the soil and community. This is where we inquire. Then we plan our garden. We lay out with input from the others. Now we design our strategy. Then we test a few plots to see what grows. We create and test. And then we plant the full garden and check regularly. This is where mobilization and monitoring comes in. And finally, we harvest and reflect on what worked. So we evaluate and monitor and evolve. So P process like gardening, communication needs care, flexibility, and community ownership to thrive. Now, in our case, in Project Inclusive, this is born out from youth consultations. I reflected on the P process model. I can say that we've applied P process into it. Like we identify core issues, we design inclusive youth-led solutions, prototype, test, and refine programs. We mobilize community mentors and volunteers and evaluate impacts on financial literacy, well-being, and confidence of our youth with PWD in our city. Now that's it for my discussion. So I'll be posting a discussion questions in the discussion forum. Hopefully you've learned something and hopefully we can engage there even more. Thank you and good day.